In 1944, a Dutch mother dug frozen ground with her bare hands. Her children were starving. The Nazis had taken everything. But buried beneath her feet was a plant that couldn't be controlled, couldn't be seized, couldn't be killed. That plant saved her family. Then, after the war, she refused to ever speak its name again. What if I told you that plant produces more food than potatoes, survives winters that kill wheat, and once you plant it, you never have to buy seeds again? It replants itself forever. For thousands of years, this was humanity's insurance against starvation. Then we erased it from history. Not because it failed, because it was too successful. A crop that grows without permission, that feeds without cost, that spreads like wildfire, cannot be owned. And what cannot be owned cannot be sold. Right now, it's probably growing within a mile of where you're sitting, and you've never heard of it. This is the story of the plant that outlasted empires, survived 2 world wars, and still waits beneath your feet. The year is 1605. A French explorer named Samuel de Champlain lands on the coast of what would become Massachusetts. Algonquin people welcome him with a feast. Among the dishes is a knobby root they call kishak panak, the sun root. Champlain tastes it. He writes in his journal that it rivals the finest artichoke of Europe. He's so impressed that he fills the hold of his ship with these tubers and sails back to France. This is the sunchoke. The scientific name is Helianthus tuberosus. It's a perennial sunflower root native to the Great Lakes and eastern woodlands of North America. Long before Champlain arrived, Native American tribes knew its secret. The Iroquois told a creation story about this plant. When Earthwoman died giving birth to twin sons named Sapling and Flint, the first sunchokes grew from her feet. A crop born from sacrifice. The plant is massive. It towers over a grown man, reaching 8 to 10 feet tall. It's crowned with bright yellow sunflowers that follow the sun across the sky. But the real treasure is invisible, buried beneath the soil. Underground, you find knobby tubers. They come in white, purple, and gold. These tubers store their energy as inulin, not starch. That difference matters, and we'll get to why in a minute. Native tribes from the Atlantic coast to the Great Plains planted it once and harvested forever. It spreads through underground rhizomes like a network of veins beneath the earth. One patch could feed an entire village for generations. In 1805, Lewis and Clark nearly starved to death crossing the Dakotas. Sacagawea saved them. She found mouse caches, thousands of sunchokes that mice had gathered underground for winter storage. She dug them up, roasted them over fire, and fed the entire expedition. The tubers could be eaten raw, crisp like water chestnuts, or boiled until soft. They could be dried and ground into flour that lasted through winter. They survived freezing temperatures, just waiting in the ground, ready whenever hunger came. The yield was staggering. A single plant produces 3 to 6 pounds of food. 1 acre produces more food than wheat, more than corn in cold climates. Studies done centuries later would prove the numbers. 64,000 calories per acre without a single drop of irrigation. Compare that to potatoes. Even in perfect conditions with irrigation, potatoes only yields 53,000 calories per acre. This wasn't luxury food. This was survival itself. This was the foundation of food security. When Champlain brought sunchokes to France in 1605, Europe was starving. Farm soils were exhausted from centuries of use. Famine struck every few years. The potato had recently arrived from South America, but people feared it. They believed potatoes caused leprosy, but the sunchoke spread like salvation. The French called it topinamber. The Italians called it girosole, meaning sunflower. It fed peasants, livestock, even kings. The best part? It required zero care. No fertilizer. No special treatment. Plant a tuber in spring and harvest in fall. Leave fragments in the ground, and next year a full crop appears on its own. Like magic. University trials done centuries later confirmed what farmers already knew. Sunchokes produced 30,000 calories per acre. Potatoes produced only 20,000. Sunchokes rivaled corn, which is the world's most important grain. So if it was this good, why did it disappear? Cracks started appearing. The tubers were small, knobby, and irregular. Difficult to clean. Impossible to harvest by machine. They spoiled faster than potatoes and couldn't sit in warehouses for months. And the inulin caused gas in people who weren't used to eating it. By the mid-1700s, the potato won the competition. Potatoes were larger, smoother, easier to store. They fit the systems Europe had built: warehouses, markets, tax collection systems. The sunchoke fell from grace. It became food for the poor and animal feed, a crop for people with nothing better. In North America, European settlers called it a weed. They preferred European crops like wheat and potatoes, crops that required buying seeds every year, crops that could be controlled, taxed, and sold through established systems. The sunchoke survived in ditches, along roadsides, in forgotten corners, but it was no longer cultivated, no longer valued, just waiting. Then war came. World War I hit Europe hard. Germany was strangled by an Allied blockade. The winter of 1916 became known as the turnip winter. People ate rutabagas that were meant for livestock because the potato crop had failed. Thousands died of starvation. Sunchokes saved some people. They were growing wild in forgotten fields. They couldn't be blockaded by enemy navies. They couldn't be seized by armies. They were just waiting underground for desperate hands to dig them up. But World War II was far worse. In France, in 1940, Nazi forces seized 80% of all food production. Potatoes were sent to German soldiers. What was left for French families? Rutabagas, vegetables that had once been fed to pigs. For 4 long years, millions of people survived on topinambar, and people despised it. The tubers were small and hard to clean, eaten every single day. They caused terrible gas and digestive problems. Still, they kept children alive when everything else was gone. The Nazi hunger plan deliberately seized food from occupied lands while millions starved. But sunchokes couldn't be controlled. They were too hardy, too wild. They just grew on their own. In the Netherlands, the winter of 1944 became known as the Hunger Winter. 22,000 people died of starvation. The government published emergency cookbooks listing wild plants, tulip bulbs, and sunchokes that people could forage. Families dug frozen ground with their bare hands looking for tubers. After liberation, survivors refused to ever eat them again. An entire generation associated topinambar with death, with Nazi occupation, with the worst years humanity had ever seen. In France, grandparents who survived would not allow it on their tables. Never again. The vegetable that saved millions of lives became a symbol of suffering and trauma. It disappeared from markets, from cookbooks, from memory. But war couldn't change what sunchokes actually are. The facts don't care about our feelings or our trauma. 73 calories per 100 grams, 2 grams of protein, 429 milligrams of potassium. That's more than bananas. Loaded with iron, copper, magnesium, and B vitamins flooding every cell. The real power is the inulin, 50 to 60% by weight. It's one of Earth's richest sources of this compound. Here's why that matters. Inulin passes through your stomach completely undigested. It reaches your colon intact. Beneficial gut bacteria, especially Bifidobacterium, feast on it. They multiply and produce short-chain fatty acids. These fatty acids lower pH in your gut, block harmful pathogens, and help your body absorb calcium and magnesium that would otherwise just pass through. Studies have shown it reduces constipation and boosts immune function. Some research suggests it may stop certain cancers before they even start. Here's another huge benefit. Potatoes spike your blood sugar rapidly. Sunchokes don't. The inulin converts to fructose very slowly. In the 1980s, diabetics wrote letters to researchers saying they ate sunchokes daily and their insulin needs dropped by half. Folk medicine validated by modern science. And the plant heals damaged land. It's perennial, requiring no tilling and causing zero erosion. Its deep roots crack compacted soil, allowing water and air to penetrate. It tolerates drought, poor soil, and extreme cold down to -30 degrees Celsius. Where annual crops die, sunchokes thrive. They were literally designed by nature for chaos and survival. In the 1960s in California, a produce wholesaler named Frida Kaplan was staring at knobby tubers gathering dust in warehouses. She realized the name was killing sales. Jerusalem artichoke. It was confusing and wrong. It wasn't from Jerusalem, and it wasn't an artichoke. The Italian word girasole, meaning sunflower, had been corrupted by English speakers into Jerusalem. She renamed it sunchoke and trademarked the name in 1980. She packaged it in 1-pound bags with recipes included. Sales jumped 600% almost immediately. Chefs discovered it. The taste is nutty and sweet, crisp when raw and creamy when cooked. High-end restaurants in San Francisco started serving sunchoke soup, roasted sides, and purees. But something bigger was happening in the 1980s. The farm crisis hit hard. Midwest farmers were collapsing economically. An experiment began. Some farmers started growing sunchokes for food, animal feed, biofuel, and independence from corporate supply chains. The logic was perfect. High yields, perennial growth. You could even make ethanol from inulin fermentation. It failed economically. There was no established market, no processing infrastructure. Farmers lost money, but the idea survived. The idea of a crop for self-sufficiency, for communities that refuse corporate control. In France, decades after the war ended, young chefs started reclaiming tapenumber. They rebranded it as part of legumes, oublis, the forgotten vegetables, not symbols of suffering anymore. Heritage, culture, history. By the 2000s, sunchokes appeared in farmers' markets across North America and Europe. The permaculture movement called them the Holy Grail. One planting, forever harvests. Today, scientists study them for marginal farmlands. In places where climate change is killing wheat and corn crops, the sunchoke just waits. Born in chaos. Built for extremes. Pure resilience. So why don't we see it everywhere? Why isn't it in every grocery store? Industrial agriculture demands uniformity. It needs crops that ripen on schedule, that can be harvested by machine, that ship without bruising, that store for months, that look perfect under fluorescent lights in supermarkets. Sunchokes refuse all of that. They mature at different times on the same plant. They spoil quickly after harvest. Potato harvesters lose half the tubers because they're too small and too attached to roots. Efficient harvesting requires specialized equipment or hand labor. Neither scales profitably. And there's the inulin problem. What makes them nutritionally superior also causes gas. Your gut bacteria need time to adapt. But modern food systems don't tolerate adaptation periods. Everything demands instant satisfaction with zero side effects. The nickname spread, fartichoke. It became a joke. Even famous chef Julia Child wrote asking, "Can you fix the flatulence problem?" Yes, you can. Cook them longer. Heat converts inulin to fructose. Or eat small amounts at first. Let your body adjust gradually. But that requires patience. Industrial food culture has none. So sunchokes stay niche. Farmers markets. Specialty crops. Home gardens where they spread uncontrollably. That uncontrollable spread is actually the entire point. You cannot kill sunchokes without poison. Any tiny fragment that stays in the soil will sprout. In Europe, they're officially called invasive when they escape cultivation. Invasive. That's the word we use for things that succeed without permission. Things that don't need us. Things that remind us that control is just an illusion we tell ourselves. The sunchoke teaches what empires and corporations want buried. Abundance doesn't require control. Perennial plants return without permission. They don't need annual seed purchases. They don't need chemical inputs. They don't need corporate approval. They just adapt, persist, and outlast. But crops that persist without generating profit are dangerous to the system. The sunchoke outshells potatoes. It heals dead soil. It feeds communities without middlemen taking a cut. It cannot be patented. It cannot be owned. It cannot generate perpetual revenue streams. So it gets called primitive, difficult, unsuitable for modern agriculture. This pattern repeats throughout history. Amaranth was banned by Spanish conquistadors for being too sacred to indigenous peoples. Tepary beans were erased because machines couldn't handle harvesting them. Mesquite trees were cleared for cattle ranching that destroyed what the trees had protected. Fava beans were replaced by expensive pharmaceutical supplements that charge $500 for what grows free in gardens. Indigenous crops that enable food sovereignty are systematically erased, not because they fail, because they succeed without creating dependency. The sunchoke survived by being unkillable, but most people alive today have never tasted one. They've never watched one grow. They've never learned that planting 3 tubers in autumn yields 30 by spring. That knowledge just waits underground, waiting for us to remember. Climate change is coming faster than predicted. Droughts, floods, extreme heat. The crops currently feeding 8 billion people were bred for climate stability. That stability is ending. The sunchoke was born in chaos. It stores energy deep underground where drought cannot reach. It survives cold that kills potato plants. It outproduces corn while using 1/3 of the water. When industrial systems fail, the sunchoke will be ready. It has been ready for 4 centuries, just waiting. French families survived wartime occupation eating tapinmur they hated. Dutch mothers dug frozen ground with bleeding hands, searching for tubers to feed starving children. Native Americans called it kishak panak, the sun root. A gift from Earth Woman's sacrifice. Names change, memory fades. Then it resurfaces, but the plant never left. Perennial, underground, waiting for hands willing to dig. We didn't lose the sunchoke. We just forgot about it. But forgetting isn't permanent. The knowledge lives in the soil. In every wild patch. In every escaped tuber. In every gardener who plants 3 and harvests 30. This crop teaches through persistence, through absolute refusal to die. Abundance was always here, growing in the dirt, completely free. The question isn't whether the sunchoke works. The question is, are you ready for a food system you don't have to buy into every single year? A crop that spreads without permission. A solution that works for people instead of corporations. The sunchoke waits beneath your feet. It has waited for centuries. It survived empires, world wars, and deliberate erasure. It's still there, growing in ditches and roadsides, reminding us that real food security doesn't come from control. It comes from cooperation with systems that regenerate themselves. Next time you see tall, scraggly sunflowers growing in a forgotten corner, remember this. Beneath those stalks is a treasure that fed our ancestors, saved millions during humanity's darkest wars, and still waits to feed anyone willing to remember. If this video made you question what we've been told about food security, share this video. Knowledge about resilient alternatives needs to spread before we desperately need them. Subscribe for more deep dives into forgotten crops that work better than industrial agriculture.